Hi, here's a quick demo on how to make the mini Christmas tree decoration. So, like with the others, take yourself 30 centimetres of your Corriedale sliver. Remembering, keep those hands wide if you want to break the yarn, the fibres off. And this time when we're rolling, we do want it to be wider at one end than the other. So put a little bit more pressure on one side than the other as you roll. And just keep rolling it. Let one end come out slightly more pointed. You see there? Keep going. Get a nice chunky shape on there, so we can open out those end bits and roll them. Okay, so this one's going to come out quite a bit bigger than the other one, I think. Okay, so once you've made your cone shape, just keep rolling till it's all smoothed in there. Poke gently, remembering to take care, keep that needle going in, keeping it nice and straight in and out. Remembering that wherever you poke, that's where you're pushing the fibres into. So if you want a really, really, really sharp point up the top, keep rolling and stabbing. The more you stab, the firmer it will become. Really work at getting that shape. We keep going and going and going. Flatten off the base by just bringing in the edges. So for more of a description on the needles, health and safety, and general tips on working these little decorations, I suggest you make your polar bear or mouse first, using the first video there. Now I have to say that these are the first online videos that I've ever done, so please excuse the amount of hesitation and a repetition of words like so and Keep poking, round and round and round we go. A nice flat base on the Christmas tree or conifer. And see, it very quickly gets the shaping that we want, but it's still really quite soft. So I would keep poking, not going all the way through into the felt mat that I've got here. And in case you haven't watched the first one, the main reason I'm not working on the polystyrene is because I've got the felt mat underneath, which is a nice matte colour as well, so you're not getting any reflection. And on the polar bear, of course, I was working with white fibre on a white bit of polystyrene, so it was hard to see. No, but you don't want the tip of your needle to be hitting a hard surface, so try and work down onto your polystyrene all the time if you've not got an ice bag or felt mat. Okay, you can see I keep turning to make sure we get that conical shape. Just keep turning. I'm going to work down here now so that you can get an even more pointed tip. You can give it My hands are a little bit dry. Give it a little bit of a rub between your hands and you'll start to get a decent point to it. If you've got warmer hands, it helps. So you can get a really big point if you want to on your conifer. To make the little stem, you take some brown, just grab some from over here. Only about 6 centimetres of your brown, split it in half. That's going to be plenty. You might even need to make it a little less. Go a little bit there. Roll it up. Poke round and round and round so we get a cylinder. Flatten off the base, really gentle, careful poking. I can't emphasize enough how sharp these needles are if you're not concentrating or getting tired or watching the telly, as I've done many times. You do end up stabbing yourself, and boy can it bleed sometimes. Okay, so keep working at a cylinder. So this is way too long, so I'm going to hold it firmly and pull off the excess that I don't want. And then I'm going to open out, as you'll know from the polar bear demo, open out to this umbrella, kind of mushroom shape, so that you've got a really good fixing point. The only difference this time is we don't want it to be as long as this, so I'm going to break off a few of the fibres so that when I stab this, as I stab, I'm going to be stabbing at the base of the stem, and it's going to keep drawing those fibres in this time. And we can go at the base of the stem. And I'm driving these fibres in so that they go in line with the trunk of the tree. And keep going all the way round. If you keep poking, stabbing at the tree, you'll get it to a much firmer consistency. You know, this much could become this size. It just depends on how firm or how soft you want your tree. The only thing I would say is when they're soft, if you're going to use them year after year after year, you'll find that they get a bit fuzzy if you've and they'll pill and get little bobbles and lumps on them if you don't felt them in firmly. If you felt them firmly, they'll last you for years and years and years. Okay, this really is the quickest of all the decorations. So to decorate your tree, take your length of sparkly yarn, poke it in. I seem to prefer starting at the bottom. I guess it's just whatever you find easiest. I've just been spiralling these up, round and round and round. Trim off when you get to where you want to finish. Now, in the tip, especially if you've not done it firm, like I haven't done very firm here. You might find you've not got enough fluff to really give that a firm fixing. So take a small pinch, doesn't need to be much, and just lay that over the end and felt that on. You could of course just use a little bit of super glue, but there's no need. You can felt it in position. I'm going to actually bring that tip over because it's far too loose for my liking. I much prefer them to be a bit firmer than that. So giving it a rub again. And we're getting better there. Good. So there's your very quick demo of a basic tree. What you can do, you could put use some of the red that you've got and the purple that you've got in your packs to put spots on it. Make whatever you want out of it. The other thing I've done on the decorations is made them more hanging decorations. I just thread them on a needle and poke them through on the animals and things. I tend to poke them in the back of the head. Not very pleasant. There we are. In the back of the heads and just through and through. If you don't have a darning needle or a needle with a big enough eye, it doesn't matter, because what you can do is just take your sparkly yarn, tie a knot in it, trim those ends off a little bit, then take some of whatever the base colour is. So obviously in the tree it's green, but you know, if it was one of the animals, just go with the main colour. And you can use that to join it all together with a firmer finish than just stabbing the yarn in on its own. That sparkly yarn doesn't felt brilliantly because the felting really needs the whole process of mixing in the scales and fibres. And obviously once it's in a glittery yarn, it doesn't have many scales to join things with because it's a very smooth surface. Okay, so you can just tidy there. You can fix this in a bit more by stabbing in places, and the bits of cotton that are behind the sparkle will join it a bit. You've got a nice neat join, and there is your super quick, very, very super quick Christmas tree. Cool. So for the vegan Christmas tree, the basic rolling is the same. So the rolling and forming the cone shape. This time you're going to use, there's carded stuffing that I've put in the pack. And so I've rolled, made a rough cone shape, exactly the same as when I'm talking about the Corriedale fibre, the slithers that the other packs have got. The more you stab, the firmer it gets. This acrylic toy stuffing does felt down really, really well, and you can get a really nice shape with it. Now, when I made my demo here, I took my time, really tried to work at getting quite a nice firm base. You want to be stabbing slower, maybe this speed. Please don't go too fast and puncture yourself too much. So really work at that shape. The whole process is the same as when you're using the sheep fibre as using this stuffing, in that those fibres will mat and mesh up together to become felted, and the more you stab, the firmer they get. Okay, that'll do for now. The big difference is between this one, obviously we're not using animal fibres, and so we're using acrylic, and I just found that this chunky acrylic yarn seemed to work quite well. So I attached that on. It takes a bit of stabbing. And then just spiraled round. You want to follow the lines. The start and the end are kind of the tricky bits where you've got to go flat on here. It's actually quite easy going up the length of the cone. And just keep going round. Try and keep the coils as close together as you can, especially once you start moving up the main body of it. Although I'm sure you can fill any gaps in with the red acrylic yarn and the sparkly yarn that I've put in. Okay, so once you're onto the actual cone, you can actually wind this on a lot more, and then every so often just poke a little patch in and keep going. And you keep going. Keep going all the way up to the top. I'm just going to very quickly whiz up here. It's going on fairly, not too tight that we're changing the shape, but tight enough that it's not slip sliding. I would, if I wasn't trying to get to the end to show you, just finishing off at the tip here, I would be taking my time a lot more so you don't get any of those nasty loops and spirals in it. Just go much slower. When you get right up to the end, make sure all this is really firmly felted in. And then you can just fold that back on itself to push down and go right in. And the more you poke and push those fibres, they should all be able to get tucked underneath one of the other loops. Obviously, if you've worked your way up slowly, you won't end up with the stuffing showing through. Just keep going. Nice. Take your time. And the more you gently work it, the neater you'll be able to get, and you'll be able to force any fibres. where you want them to be. Okay, so you've ended up with a wool-coated cone at the moment. Then, now this is a little bit trickier. It's a nylon-based brown. It is very smooth and silky, so it's not always the easiest to work with. You want to, almost a mixture between rolling and folding it. Go all the way up. And because this was so slippery, I ended up just folding it in half and wrapping some wisps around to try and help. It really is a bit of a case of just get it rolled and wrapped into a bundle, and then you can poke, 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 poke to try and get a little bit of a tree stump going. It was at the short notice, it was the only synthetic fibre I could lay my hands on, but it does felt nicely, so does the job. So as for the other tree, try and flatten off just a little bit, taking your time there and around. Okay, so we end up with a little stump shape. Open out those edges a little bit. You don't need to worry quite so much about having the great big umbrella shape, especially with this fine nylon. It felts in really quickly and easily. So pop that in position and really push those fibres in deep. Excuse me. Okay, so if when you've done it, you suddenly realise you've got great big patches, there's things you can do, of course. You can add bits of green if you want to, or you can really go for it with decorating with the red and the gold sparkle that you've got. So there's all sorts of different ways you could be decorating that. You could put the red and the gold together and spiral them up together, or if you really wanted to give it a thick stripe, just double up your yarn, go for it. I've also put some trilobal, which is another nylon based fibre that's shiny, so you could just decorate it by spiraling that up it, whatever takes your fancy. But say you just want to use double length of yarn, you can put that in there, come across, and I'm going to work at filling in a few of my gaps with this, so I can hopefully lose a little bit of these gaps just by working my way up all the way to the top. So you end up with a rather groovy looking Christmas tree, decorated however you fancy. And same again, it then just needs a loop of sparkle through it, so you can hang it or place it wherever you want. Okay, good luck, have fun.